Welcome to the exoduscry podcast, where we have honest conversations around exploitation, trafficking, sexual culture, and justice.
Welcome back to the exoduscry podcast. Today we're joined by speaker, author, pastor Danny Silk. His organization, Loving on Purpose, has inspired multiple individuals to find freedom in their relationships. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Danny, it's such an honor to have you on our podcast. I've gotten to know you in a personal way over these last few years, and I often refer to you and your work as someone who helped me through a very difficult, challenging season of my own life. And so just super grateful for who you are, your perspective, your teachings, your mentorship. It's really been life-changing for me personally. And I say that in the most absolutely sincere and concrete way. And so, yeah, just excited to kind of get into it today and talk about some of the things that you've spoken into in my own life. Things like how to deal with trauma, things like how to deal with relational conflict, things to deal with honoring and respecting our own needs and boundaries. I've just learned so much in the relationship space with you. So so excited to jump into that.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Vince. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Absolutely. Something that you said to me at one point, there's so many one-liners over my time of just conversing with you. But I remember, just kind of beginning to become more aware of my own relationship deficiencies, how I show up, and feeling kind of dumb, because I'm reading and studying your work, having, these conversations with you. And I was like, man, I really suck at this. And you were like, well, I'm not good at working on cars. And it was such an interesting perspective-giving moment. It really helped me kind of give myself grace, because I think what I realized in that moment is there's no one who's good at everything.
No.
And relationships are something that are a cultivated skill that takes a lot of intentionality and a lot of work.
Sure.
And so I think I have been very oriented towards my passion, my purpose, that, and relationships have happened where it's good, it's fine. Where it's not, it's just, get out of the way. And so yeah, learning from you how to begin to cultivate a better approach on how to show up in relationships. I'd love to just start with, how did this work begin for you? Like, what inspired you to want to be someone who helps others with their relationships? And if we could start there.
You just need a banged up childhood. You just need a really dysfunctional household, and you need lots of scary stuff in your upbringing, and that'll put you on the path to needing a solution, right? So that's pretty much how it started for me. It would be one of those healers that's looking for healing himself, and then you mix into that. You find someone else who had really similar experiences, and you marry them. And then you shake real hard, and you have all kinds of craziness that you now have got to figure out, how are we going to not reproduce what both our families have done? And that requires a whole bunch of growth, a whole bunch of pain, a whole bunch of feeling out of control, a whole bunch of learning and grit and, fortitude and perseverance and love. Ultimately, it takes a whole bunch of love. So I think the journey is just paved with that. Some people think I grew up in a Christian family or whatever. No, my mom was married 3 times. My dad was married 3 times. My wife's mom and dad were both married 3 times, and her stepfather was married 3 times. So there's 15 marriages rolling into the people that taught us what relationships and covenant look like.
Perfect.
Yeah.
They've had lots of experience.
There's so many facets to this. Who would you like to learn from, right?
Oh, man.
So that piece right there is our starting point. We get saved. We come into I think we live in a small town. We went to the same school. We were in different classes, but so we're very familiar with each other in a way. We weren't friends or anything, but we ended up in a small church, and we're both single, and we're both young, and we've both been promiscuous, so we're like looking for love. And it's like, let's get this party started. Let's get this moving. And so we about 2 months in, we decided to get married 2 months later. So 4 months into this, we end up married. And 12 years later, of some pretty rough times, we're sitting at our pastor's house who married us, and we were bickering about something. He goes, "That reminds me of that note that was on your assessment." And I said, "What assessment? Or what note?" He goes, "The Taylor-Johnson compatibility assessment." I said, "Yeah. Remember the note that was on yours?" I said, "No." And his wife from the kitchen says, "You didn't tell them about the note?" And both Sherry and I are leaning forward. "What note?" He goes, "That's funny. I didn't tell you about the note, but for 10 years, I would take that assessment and I would send it to the psychologist. He would run it through his software. I'd get it back. I'd pull out the results. I'd go over it with a couple. I got yours. I opened it up, and there's a Post-it note on there, and it said, 'Bill, do whatever you can to stop this marriage.'" Because Sherry and I are clinically incompatible. So we got 15 marriages and clinically incompatible as a foundation going forward on what we had to work out.
Sorry, guys. Thought you saw the note.
Oh, I forgot to tell you about that.
10 years of disconnection, conflict, heartache. Oh,
Yeah.
Did you want to strangle?
Well, it explained a lot.
You had some maturity at that point. Could have gone bad if it would have been after a few years.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Wow. So you're staring at this, and then is the feeling like, let's just let each other go at this point? Or was the feeling, oh, now we know what to work on? How did that moment hit you?
It was, I think there's probably some gratitude in, I think if you would have told us, we wouldn't have made it, because we had another great excuse to walk away. We have lots of examples of walking away, so it's normal to walk away. We would have had a really great excuse to walk away because we'd been hopeless. Not knowing, we had 3 kids at the time. We have quite a set of reasons to hang on and to work this through. And we're both so bullheaded that it's just kind of in the ingredients here. But looking back, next month is 40 years for us, so we're like, poof, we've been through so much, and we are so in love, and we are so connected, and we are so fruitful. But it came from so much investment and having to become a different person, really. I mean, we just are different people. And, probably the big change in our relationship was shortly thereafter. We kind of were introduced to the inner healing ministries, and Sozo was one of those. And was brand new to us. We'd never heard anything like that. And they were coming up to Weaverville, where we were pastoring this church, and they were going to do sozos. I said, great. And Sherry said, I'll do one. And I'm like, really? You're going to do one? Like, you are the last one in line to do anything like this ever. And you're running to the front of the line. Wow, that's amazing. Because you were raised by the wolves, right? She's got 6 brothers, 2 parents on their 3rd marriage that are just not going to get a divorce, even though they scream, let's just get a divorce every night, at dinner. And the kids are going, yeah, get a divorce. And that is her environment, her childhood. And it's like, wow, yeah, so awesome. So she comes home and she's quiet. I was like, well, how was it? She says, it was good. And that's all she said. And I'm like, wow, that's probably the least information she's ever given me about anything. That's doesn't cover it. Next day, she says, the Lord just really showed me that I have never felt protected. And I'm thinking, for sure. And she says, by you. I'm like, wait a second. How did I end up in your sozo? I'm the victim here. I'm the one that is on the receiving end of all your anger and all your punishment and all the defensive tools that you have. How in the world am I getting blamed for this? And so I am in a spin over any responsibility at all, really. And it took me probably a moment for the Lord to say, did you hear what I said? I said, yeah, I heard what she said. Did you hear what I said? I'm like, and it dawned on me. I never one time up until that point thought about protecting her. I only thought about protecting myself from her rage and from her anger and her judgment. I thought about protecting everyone else, but I never thought about protecting her. And as soon as I made that repentance in my paradigm, I began to realize she's not angry. She's scared. She's not angry. She's hurt. She's not angry. She feels out of control and powerless right now. So as I began to move towards her instead of away from her in these, I'll just call them episodes, I began to experience a very different woman, because I have a different response to her pain and her hurt than I do her rage and her anger. I have a different response to her sadness or her fear than I do her rage and her anger. So I began to make some pretty big leaps in understanding her and then creating a very different space for us to meet as soon as I began to take on the role of protecting her.
That's powerful.
Life-changing.
Because in those moments when you feel attacked, it's so natural to defend or wall off or shut down or create distance. What did that look like moving towards her? I mean, how were you able to suspend your own feelings of being attacked or offense, or was it just seeing the wound underneath it that changed it for you to becoming more of a compassionate thing where you could absorb that? And then like, how did that look like? Like, were you able to show up for her despite feeling like you were the one?
Yeah, well, it probably didn't hurt any less. It probably didn't trigger me any less. I just took responsibility to protect her when she needed it, and when she's hurt, she needs protection. And when she's scared, she needs protection. And when she feels out of control and powerless, she needs to feel my partnership. She needs to feel her companion. So that paradigm shift, I use the word repentance as I see this differently than I ever have. And, if you ever have an animal that you love and they get injured and you come towards them and you're trying to help them and they're barking and they're biting and you're just like, it's going to be all right. You're going to be okay. As you move in towards, I had a dog get hit by a car and I had to put her in the back of my truck and she was she's a lab. She weighs 80 pounds. And so I'm trying to help her out and she's just freaking out. And I just stuck with her because she needed protection right there. So it's that kind of responsibility and compassion that is now moving me towards the fire, if you will. I mean, it's just that masculine energy that I'm going to use right here, right now, that probably won't make sense to you, because you wouldn't move towards me in my rage. You would protect yourself. And she needed me to be a man and not a little boy. And, unfortunately for her or us, we were 10, 12, 14 years into our marriage before I learned that. So we were in our early 30s and I'm starting to grow up. I'm starting to become a man in the relationship. Prior to that, I was a needy little boy. And I was just trying to get her to be okay so that I could be okay. And I was on the receiving end all the time instead of on the providing end. I wasn't leading in provision for cherishing and nourishing. I was manipulating her so I could be okay. And I think there's a lot of that goes on when you don't have a dad, like my dad left when I'm 5. We have a parade of boyfriends that move through our house. When I was writing my master's, one of the reports that I had to write 20 pages about my life, which kind of tears you into the micro of your life, purpose of the exercise. And I got this one section where I stopped writing at 25 or 30 of the names of the men that I could remember that lived with us between the time I was 8 and 12 years old.
Wow.
In 4 years' time, the parade of men. And then my mom married a guy when I was 12. He was my stepdad for 3 years, and then he left when I was 15.
Wow.
So, this is the man training that I had, and it just kind of locked me into boy. And I was a boy until I was in my early 30s. And the pastor of a church. Wow.
Yeah, so coming back to my initial question, or just my initial comments about this idea that relationships, how we show up in relationships is learned, it's cultivated, and that work has to be intentional. And so some people who are watching this or listening to this might think, what does this have to do with trafficking? I thought I was on the Exoduscry podcast. And the answer is everything. It has everything to do with trafficking. Because trafficking is the result of broken families. And it's as a result of that, broken children. And for us at Exoduscry, I think that, we've attracted a really stellar team of individuals, but all the perfect people on the planet were gone. And
they're all dead.
So with all the perfect ones no longer available, we have brokenness. Yeah. And that shows up in different ways in different seasons. And I know in my case, of course, I'm the least broken of all of us, but
there we go. And the most humble.
Well, I wasn't going to say that, but now that you mention it, I mean, it's kidding. No, I have often questioned, Lord, why did you call me into this? I feel, I grew up in a broken home. I feel so much brokenness. And, but, just showing up for the work in a way that was passionate and dedicated and all of that, but really suffering on the inside as a result of a lot of just disconnected relationship dynamics going on. And then looking out across the landscape of this abolition, anti-trafficking movement, and just seeing different people in different situations, struggling. And so we developed a vision for how can we create space for some of these leaders to come and begin to work on some of this stuff, begin to heal some of this, begin to, find the healing and the mentorship that they need to grow into healthy leaders. And so we started something called our abolition retreat, where we take a week and really just try to pour into these people. But I don't think I would have really honed that vision and apart from the work that you and I have done together. And I think that what has helped me grow so profoundly from being somebody who experienced anxiety all the time to almost never experiencing anxiety. I think that growth, that evolution in my life that occurred through so much of the work we've done together, what really stood out to me is how concrete, how palpable your perspective is when it comes to personal growth and relationship growth. Meaning, I'd read a lot out there, about attachment styles and just all kinds of different things, and things that are helpful, but in some ways always felt a bit out of reach. Like I don't know how this helps my situation. And so in your book, Keep Your Love On, you talk a lot about this idea of becoming a powerful person. And not in the sense of, well, I'm rich and famous and so now I'm powerful, but in the sense of being someone who can be responsible for their decisions, who is being someone who honors and respects their own needs and boundaries. And then the way that translates into how you show up in relationships. And so I found that to be really empowering. And I'm curious if, maybe even just piggybacking on what you've described so far about your situation, you could talk a bit more about how you counsel people at just sort of like a foundational level to build a healthy relationship.
Yeah, the Keep Your Love On material, that book, and all that we've built around it is exactly that. It is. I'm just trying to boil down as succinctly and as applicably as I can. How do you get out of this stuff? Because there's a world around you that wants to convince you that you are a powerless victim and that you are on the receiving end of the fruit of your trauma, and then you are looped by your triggers. So you just now need the world around you to adjust for you to be okay. And that is a terrible advice. That is just the worst thing that you can tell somebody who has been busted up and ground up by their childhood in particular. It's really the understanding that if you don't learn to control yourself, you will live out of control. And if you don't learn that on a good day, the one you can control is you never control other people, then you're just going to repeat the chaos because you're trying to control what you don't control and you're not controlling what you can control. And when you're trying to control everything around you, everybody around you, you're trying to trick people into meeting your needs, whether that is supply or protection, then you're a control freak. you're just an absolute anxious control freak. And I love to tell control freaks, control your freaking self. Control your freaking self, because that's your ticket out of the chaos that you've surrounded yourself with, that you live in, that you wake up to, that you try to anesthetize at night. You're just trying to get out of the responsibility of all the chaos that you have to control. So being a powerful person, it has everything to do with, be sure that you activate the power that really is there for you. And that comes from inside out, not from outside in. And then you have to win the war between love and fear. Because fear wants to be your counselor as much as love wants to be your counselor. And you get to decide who's going to be my counselor today. Am I going to be guided by a spirit of love that bears the fruit of the spirit of love? Or will I be guided by the spirit of fear that bears the fruit of division, destruction, and deception? What will be my supply in, what will be the fuel and what will be the fruit? And if I don't win this battle, then I will be constantly trying to figure out how to say I'm a lover driven by fear. Well, there's no such thing. Love drives out fear. Bad news, fear drives out love. So you have to decide what spirit you're of in your relationships. And then I have to take responsibility as a powerful person motivated by love, that my goal in my relationships is connection. 100% of the marriage counseling sessions that I've had, I ask, what's the goal of this marriage? And most people don't know. Most people have no idea what the goal of their marriage is, because they've not thought. By the time they get to a counselor, they're unaware that they've changed their goal from connection to distance. And now I am protecting myself from you. And that's the breakdown of our relationship, is I've made the goal distance. And so have you, usually. Sometimes that's not true on both sides, but it's at least true on one side. And if my goal with you is distance, you can't do anything right. You can't do anything right, because no matter what you try to do, I will twist it around to recreate my distance. And then I'll blame it on you. So I have to take responsibility for my goal in the relationship. And that would be, it has to be connection. Yours has to be connection. And we still have to work out the disconnect. But at least the goal is connection. And in having that, you now have personal responsibility and, motivated by love, the goal of finding connection again. That's what I'm directing myself towards. That's what you're directing yourself towards. If you don't have that, if one of these two people say, my goal is distance and I'm going to keep it, then I would say, and this is our last appointment. I won't be helping you because you don't need my help creating distance. You're doing a fantastic job without me. I need you to be personally responsible to change your goal, at least change your goal. It doesn't mean we don't have stuff to work through, but if you have the goal of distance, we're not working through anything. And then I need you to be committed to respectful communication, which means I will not be heaping anxiety into our conversations. I will be directing myself in a way that helps us achieve the goal of connection. So my respectful communication will be my job, and I will require it from you. And if you violate it, then we'll hit the next level, which is practicing healthy boundaries. And healthy boundaries isn't how fast can I get you away from me. Healthy boundaries really is about me deciding what I will participate in and what I will not. So I have as many disrespectful exchanges with other people as I participate in. If I have a high standard of respect, I participate in no disrespectful exchanges. If I have a high standard of responsibility, I participate in no blame, accusation, or victim relationships. I have no place where I participate in irresponsibility or disrespect. So we call it the KYLO 5. KYLO stands for keep your love on, not Kylo Ren. No, we had this before Star Wars came along, or that part of Star Wars. Be a powerful person, win the war between love and fear, keep connection your goal, practice respectful communication, and honor healthy boundaries. That's the KYLO 5.
One more time.
Powerful person, win the war between love and fear, keep connection the goal, practice respectful communication, honor healthy boundaries.
So good. It's a helpful roadmap for how to build healthy relationships. I think that in this anti-trafficking space, we're coming up against a system where there are a lot of predator and prey dynamics going on. And so we can internalize those dynamics in the way that we show up in our own relationships. And so I think for me, having been in this movement now for so long, nearly 2 decades, I just have really developed a heart for not only participating in and building healthy relationships myself, but wanting that for our team, for this movement. And so we keep copies of Keep Your Love On. I give them away to people. I encourage everyone to read it. I've read it numerous times. I just keep reading it over and over. And I love the idea of just acknowledging that the goal of this relationship is connection. And if you're not aware of that goal, the relationship can end up in so many different places with all, a lot of what you've talked about, manipulation dynamics and control dynamics and things like that.
When a girl who's been trafficked escapes that life, one of the biggest threats they face is the possibility of being pulled back into it. Because of the level of trauma trafficking survivors have endured and the multi-layered psychological manipulation they've been under, in many cases it can take a while for them to heal, to believe in their own intrinsic value and develop the tools they need to overcome their PTSD. Tragically, some survivors never get there. This is where trauma therapy comes in. A therapist who specializes in working with victims of sexual trauma can be a game changer in terms of a survivor's ability to heal and build a new life. For the women that we work with, after 6 months of therapy, they reported to us an 87% decrease in self-harm, a 63% decrease in suicidal thoughts, and a 61% decrease in depression. This therapy has been life-changing. Isabella is a trafficking survivor we've supported. She told us, "The sessions have been life-changing. Your belief in my ability to heal has ignited a fire of hope within me, and your continued support gives me the strength to face each day with renewed courage and determination." You can help change the life of a trafficking survivor by giving at exoduscry.com/donate.
For us in this movement, I think one of the things that has been a challenge is the vicarious trauma or the secondary PTSD that a lot of us experience as a result of this work of staring at this behemoth predator system of violence and exploitation day in and day out. It can be difficult at times to metabolize that. And I know for myself, I have gone through seasons where I've really felt that secondary PTSD and vicarious trauma. And I'm curious, in your work, if you've seen that show up, what role that plays in a relationship. How do you deal with a situation where one person or the other is having some of that vicarious trauma and maybe bringing that into the relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's creating a barrier there. For example, the vision of sex that I'm staring at is so broken that I want nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing.
Sure.
People becoming hyposexual or where connection feels too vulnerable because I need to protect now because the pain that's out there is too great. And so I need to self-isolate. Can you speak to that?
I have a background in social work, so a lot of my work was with foster children and adoptive children. My master's degree is in social work, so it kind of set me up to be working with family reunification, substance abuse in family dynamics, domestic violence, batterers treatment programs. Everyone has some momentum in collecting trauma. There's everyone on this planet. I don't know anybody that escaped that, obviously at various levels. And so, if I've absorbed, a certain level of pain, I cope with that somehow. I've created some mechanism to survive that level of pain, whatever it might be. And it's hard to, talk to some people who it feels like, oh, you haven't really experienced a lot of trauma. But whatever their deepest level of trauma it is, that's their deepest level. They're the most traumatized they've ever been with that. So, okay, they're making a big deal out of their dog dying. I'm like, wow, gosh, wow, that's your big deal. And yet that's exactly what is got them hung up, and they don't want to get another dog because they don't ever want to experience that ever again. Like, okay, got it. So everyone has their biggest trauma. Nonetheless, we're all just as responsible to enter the healing journey that leads us back to being a powerful person. From wherever your starting point is, your journey is to get back to being a powerful person that can tell themselves what to do. And then surround yourself with people that are healthy and powerful and wise, because the safety of surrounding yourself with healthy, wise people is a big part of the healing journey. Trying to do it all by yourself, mistake, because you're the master of reality. I'll just say that anybody that's in pain is a narcissist. Okay, anybody in pain thinks that they know everything. They think they see the world accurately. They want to define for everyone around them reality. That's poisonous, and you have to be willing to be affected by people that want to help you, people who care, and people who are doing a good job with their lives. And that, that in itself is just a scary proposition by people that have been exploited, that I would let anyone have access to shape in my life. But once they team you up with empowerment, meaning, what are you going to do? Like, if you're on a healing journey, you should have people around you who keep asking you, what are you going to do? To remind you that this is your responsibility. It's not my responsibility to get you to do my solution to your problem. It's your responsibility to figure out what part of your problem are you working on right now, and what is your plan to heal up the brokenness that is leading you to invite destruction into your life. What are you going to do to get away from that, to heal, to get to the next level? Having people around you that will keep asking you, what are you going to do, is part of being a wise person. If you're around people who want control of you, then you've just switched pimps, and maybe your new pimp is a pastor, maybe they're whatever, they're saying, here, this is what you got to do. This is what you got to do. This is what you got to do. Like, that is a disempowering, victimizing intervention you've now created yourself as the powerful person, and the broken person is now dependent on you. That is super dangerous and a bad idea. And the only reason that's happening is because of the brokenness of that helper. So you should be surrounding yourself with people who are asking you, what are you going to do? And then they're there to help coach you on how that might work out for you if you did that. What else might you try?
So embracing the accountability of your own healing.
Yeah, your own decisions. Yeah, the consequences of your decisions.
Yeah, it's strange how we have this mentality that can sometimes be like, oh, well, you need healing, so that must be somebody else's responsibility.
Well, you're a victim.
Right.
And you need to be rescued.
Right.
And yes and yes. And now what? Because you can't live there.
Mm-hmm.
You actually have to become a powerful person. You cannot live as a victim. And that's the hard part. So the helper, when you raise your children, you don't raise your children to stay babies.
Right.
You were born a baby. I just keep reminding you that you're a baby. Well, if I do that, I now have a hairy baby that I have to live their life for.
Right.
But they need me. Okay, that is the sick and twisted version of parenting.
Yeah. Right.
So I have to have a process that keeps inviting you to more responsibility for yourself, more responsibility for your consequences, better decision making, more information. This process of parenting is really to prepare you to live independent of me, not to stay dependent on me.
So I like framing this idea of the need for healing, the pain that I have in my life, let's say, as my responsibility, in the same way that my needs are my responsibility. It's a very empowering perspective, and it's true. And it's empowering because I'm able to make decisions to improve myself, as opposed to just sitting around waiting for somebody else to do it for me. So in that, what do you think are some of the key ingredients to finding that healing? If there's this trauma in a person's life, if there are these wounds that have been invoked in this person's life, and it's creating disconnection in the relationship with others, what are some of the ingredients I need to actually get that healing, to move through that pain, that trauma, that PTSD, that grief, whatever it is? So just to take your point at face value, what are you going to do about that? That's great. And then what do they do?
Well, what's the problem?
Okay.
What is the problem that we're solving here? And I have to find that, and I probably need help finding it. Like, I'm not sure what the problem is. I don't know why I keep recreating the same scenario in my life. Like, well, there's something that, and it's usually tied to some wounding experience in my past where somebody betrayed me, somebody hurt me, somebody created a reason for me to disconnect, self-preserve, and trust no one. That's usually someplace back there. And then there's a bunch of lies that are attached to that I now believe, which is nobody's trustworthy. Nobody cares about me. I better take care of myself. Women are dangerous. Men are dangerous. Money is dangerous. Whatever. Somehow I have this lie connected to that experience. Well, we're going to have to go find that. We're going to have to go find this place where I was so hurt. I was so severed from other people, severed from God, severed from my own heart. There's a place of wounding that has disconnected me, usually from one or all three of these places. God's a scary guy. I got to protect myself from him. I can't trust myself, but I'm all by myself. And I certainly can't trust other people because every person I've ever known exploited me. So that's a pretty hellish place. And I am in constant self-preservation or survival mode. So I learned to be a really great manipulator. I learned to be a really great survivor. I see people as resources, not as relationships. I got to be in control of every environment and relationship that I'm in going forward. So I live as an orphan. Most places are everywhere in my life. I just am all by myself in survival mode everywhere. And then I invite the only people that will participate in that have a similar wound. You have to be willing to participate in being manipulated, being punished, being used. You have to be willing to participate in that for that relationship to happen. Unless you're in a cage, you have to participate. And that's where I start changing. I no longer participate in that. And as soon as you stop participating in it, your relationship will change with that person or with those people or with that group. You say, I'm not doing that. And there's a boundary. That's a boundary, is I'm not going to do that anymore.
That's good.
What am I going to do? I haven't figured out what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to do that. And then the journey begins about, well, what else could I do?
On that note, why is self-care so powerful? Like, why does it work? I know for me that I just felt better when I started doing yoga, cold plunging, getting back in the ocean, going surfing, doing jujitsu. There was a lot of what I would describe as like healthy outlets. And as I began to participate in it, I just felt better. I actually felt some of that healing begin to happen. What's underneath that? Why is self-care important? What does that do for us that helps improve our situation and evacuate pain?
Well, that's the behavior of a powerful person. I'm going to tell myself what to do. And then I'm going to win the war of love and fear, because I've been afraid to say yes to those things because of the consequences in other relationships if I did. So I just would neglect. I need some things. There, everything you just listed there meets needs in you that are really deep and really important. But you found a reason to neglect those things to survive. And so over an extended period of time, you're now being deceived, divided, and destroyed. That's what's happening when you live in an environment of neglect. You just wither and you lose who you are. But when you switch over to finding ways to get your needs met, not only from yourself but also in your relationships, now you begin to flourish. Now thriving is happening, which is exactly who you want to invite to come closer are the people who help you thrive. And the people who get moved out of access to you or the people you start setting boundaries with are the people that are damaging that. And over time, you are surrounded by a respectful, responsible company of people who not only are willing to supply the needs that you have, but you likewise are nourishing and paying attention to what they need. And that is life. That is the exchange of love, really. I care about you, you care about me. And you want us to surround yourself with an environment of people that are good at that, doing that. And when people break down there, that's going to end up in a confrontation. That we're going to have a hard conversation about my experience of you. And you will learn something about me because I'll tell you the truth, and you'll adjust because you care. So I won't come at you with, you're so selfish, you're so abusive. I'll come at you with, I got hurt and I feel disconnected from you. And I need to feel protected from the way you handle when you're upset. And now we have just exchanged great information. There'll be an adjustment because this is how we continue to thrive together, is we have the ability and the commitment to send the message, I care about you, you care about me. And the people that are bad at that or don't want that, they keep moving farther away from access to my life, my time, my energy.
Now, we talked about the idea of, there's an anti-trafficking movement, there's an abolition movement, there's a body and a group of people who are fighting this evil that's holding our planet hostage. And we talked about how all the perfect humans were already employed. So we got some people with some problems in this movement. Since they have those problems and since they're broken, you wrote a book called Unpunishable. But shouldn't all those people just be punished?
Well, it really depends.
Shouldn't we just go around and punish all the broken, hurting people who have fallen short?
Yeah. Well, as a pastor for 30 years, I've had to sort this out. I've had to figure out, what does it mean that God loves me unless I screw up? Then then he's chasing me around like an angry father, and how do I not end up with a theology that I wake up in a courtroom every day before the judge wondering if I need punishment or if I'm on parole? What is the relationship I have with this God of mine? And for a very long time, I would say I struggled with, I made mistakes, I'm making mistakes, I'm going to make mistakes. I appear before the judge, and he lets me know if I'm deserving of punishment today. Be in a really hard marriage and not be before the judge, because it's easy to make mistakes in a marriage where you're just protecting yourself all the time. It's easy to feel like you're failing. It's easy to judge yourself harshly. It's easy to judge other people harshly. So that relationship of waking up in a courtroom before a judge is a paradigm of who God is. And if I actually believe the new covenant, if I really do believe that Jesus is who he says he is to me, he's my savior, he saved me from something. What he saved me from is the courtroom. The blood of Jesus poured out on that cross cleanses me of not most of my sin, all of it. It literally turned me into a new creation. And now I am no longer a criminal before a judge. I am now a son before a loving father. And I am now navigating my connection with my loving father. Have I grieved him? Have I quenched him? Have I broke his heart, or have I disconnected from him? I wake up in the living room and we are managing that because he loves and cares for me and wants nothing more than my success, in love with him. And I care for him, and I want nothing more than to protect his heart and to be about his will. So how are we navigating this? And punishment is gone. Punishment's not even on the table. all that's on the table is the condition of our connection and paying attention to that. That's the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is not the fear of being punished by the Lord. The fear of the Lord is the fear of being disconnected from the Lord, which ultimately, that's hell. Hell is being disconnected from God for eternity. So I mentioned earlier, next month is 40 years for Sherry and I. And I walk in the fear of Sherry, right? I mean, I have the fear of Sherry in me.
The fear of disconnection.
It's not the fear of being punished by Sherry, because we established a long time ago, you can't control me with your threat of punishment. I won't be controlled. That led to lots of disconnection because I was more concerned about proving I'm not controlled by her than I was controlling myself to do what I actually wanted to, which was to connect with her. So the fear of Sherry is the fear of being disconnected, because I don't have a worse day than the day I'm disconnected from Sherry. That's the worst day that I have, is to be disconnected from my wife. So I am, as an older man, I have adjusted a bunch of what I would call freedoms. I've self-edited my drop-down menu to manage myself in the relationship to protect our connection. As a young man, that drop-down had a whole bunch of things on it. I could do whatever I want. You don't control me. But they all led to a disconnect. I call that YMD, young man disorder. Young man disorder led to so much poor choice in my life. Over here, I have self-edited only to protect our relationship, because I know if I do that, it hurts her. If it hurts her, it threatens our connection. I'm not going to do it. If I do that, it scares her. No, I'm not going to do it. I'll self-edit. For some reason, Sherry and I have a completely different experience of my driving. Like, I don't understand how this could be. You know, like, I am a really good driver, and I'm having the time of my life, and she thinks we're going to die. Like, I can't believe it. So I had to edit off of my drive however I want, free, to, she says, you're scaring me. And I am protecting our connection rather than protecting my freedom.
Right.
So that's the power of the fear of the Lord, is that I navigate myself to protect my connection to him instead of needing to be threatened sufficiently to give up control. And for whatever reason, we've invited punishment into our theology because we actually think that's who God is. So until I get over here, I really don't understand that it's really all about connection. It's all about love. I mean, the greatest commandment is about love, not about survival, not about the law. It's really about love. So until we get that piece, I don't know how we don't just shoot our wounded, which is pretty much what we do.
So the idea of a healthy leadership culture would be more focused on protecting our connection.
Absolutely.
Than punishing for our shortcomings.
Than trying to control.
Yeah.
So I really trust that you will adjust if you know the truth. And if you don't, then you don't love me, which I think is the tricky part for a bunch of folks. When Jesus says, many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, didn't I prophesy? Didn't I do all these signs and wonders? And didn't I do all this amazing stuff? And he'll say, away from me, you workers of iniquity, I never knew you. And that is the truth about a relationship. Didn't I do all this stuff that actually benefited me primarily in your name? And he'll say, I told you a bunch of times that you were breaking my heart. that you were disconnected from me. The Holy Spirit communicated to you. You felt it, you knew it for a while, and then you didn't. Like, whoa, what the heck? But that's true in human relationships. If I have to make you act like you care about me, you don't. And if I stop, you'll go away. Which is why I keep trying to control you. And it's probably the painful piece of being a parent of adult children is if you manage your kids with intimidation and fear, as soon as they have a choice, they won't be around you.
So good. Yeah, I like exploring this subject because for reasons I've mentioned, I think the work that we're doing at exoduscry and just in this movement in general is very important work, and it deserves all the attention that we give it. But I also just have a huge heart for healthy leaders and for us to find the helpful tools to grow, mature, work through our pain, build healthy relationships, healthy families. And ultimately, I think that is the really, really big picture answer to this problem, is just raising up healthy people, healthy families, healthy children. So
that's a lead into the newest book that I've written.
Yes.
The Way of the Dragon Slayer. And, the exploitation and trafficking is driven by consumers, the vast majority being men. And you think, this is such a breakdown of masculinity that men would consume women, consume children. The disgust of men abandoning their primary role as protectors, as providers, as connectors. This entire movement that you're involved in and you're leading in is fueled by that brokenness. I mentioned mine, how destructive not protecting Sherry, not being willing to bring cherishing and nourishing to her, not taking responsibility to be the one that loves her and loves her as Christ loves the church. To fail in all three of those areas for a decade is, it's part of this next chapter of life really is to help men heal. And it takes men to train boys to become men. I know that fatherlessness is a ginormous issue in our society, and the stats just prove out that if you chase the father away from a family, you set the children up for every social ill we have, And as big of a problem as fatherlessness is, I think the bigger problem is brotherlessness. That men become isolated. And there's a million reasons why, but none of those excuses defend men from becoming predators. See, if I run with a group of healthy brothers, they'll never let me be a predator. They'll never let me be a terrible father. Right. They'll never let me be a bad husband. They won't let me be a bad man. They just won't let me do it.
I'm glad that you wrote this book. I actually have been talking with my sons a lot recently about this idea of developing their masculine core.
Right.
So really understanding in concrete terms, what are the characteristics of a healthy masculinity, of a masculine core, of what it means to be a man. And then in that same time, I remember having a conversation with you and just kind of realizing this book was coming out. So the timing has been great. I'm so glad that you've poured this passion that you have for men into a book to help men really strengthen and fortify their masculine core. And that is another thing that is really at the root of this. We often talk about at Exoduscry is the demand side of this equation. Men, who are using their power to subjugate, oppress, and exploit instead of to protect and to liberate and to heal. So the name of the book, one more time.
The Way of the Dragon Slayer. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So where is that available? Just everywhere books are sold?
Dragonslayer.co.
Okay.
And you could access it also through lovingonpurpose.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Danny, for joining us. And just thanks so much for your continued ongoing work with me and our team. Just super grateful for you. And yeah, it's been a good time.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
It's awesome to be with you.
You can check out all our podcast episodes, articles, and films at exoduscry.com and join the daily conversation by following Exoduscry on all major social platforms.